Hello, my name is Peter Milton and I am the developer of TimeChainage. In this tutorial we will look at importing and exporting tabular data between TimeChainage and Microsoft Excel. First, let's explore why we might want to do this. Well, you might just prefer working in Excel, in which case you can do your development work in Excel and then copy and paste the data into TimeChainage. You may want to produce reports that are not catered for by any of the built-in reports, in which case you can copy the desired table from TimeChainage, paste it into Excel and use that data in your reports. You may be using Primavera P6 or Microsoft Project as your main planning software, but want to create and update TimeChainage charts to complement your Gantt chart. This can be done using an Excel template that reformats the data from P6 or Project to make it compatible with TimeChainage. This is a more involved process than we have time for in this video, so if you are interested, watch out for the videos that will be coming out soon. I have a project open that we can use for this demonstration. Most of the data input forms in TimeChainage allow for copying to and pasting from the Windows clipboard, so you have flexibility in the way you work. Let's look at which data forms have copying and pasting functionality. First, the work breakdown structure form. The WBS form contains tabular data that you may want to work with in Excel. The copy command will copy the entire table with all of the columns. The paste command will replace whatever is in the table with the contents of the clipboard. Let's now look at the plan form. You may prefer to develop all or part of your schedule in Excel, then paste it into TimeChainage, or else you may wish to create custom reports using the plan data. Note that if you have a filter running, the copy command will only copy the filtered data to the clipboard. Next, we will open the Actuals form. If you would prefer to work in Excel when adding actual data, you can do so. Or you may want to produce a custom report by exporting the table. Like the plan form, if you use any of the filters in the toolbar, then only the filtered data is copied to the clipboard. Next are the activity code forms. They work just like the WBS form. Let's now look at the WBS code form. And again you have the copy and paste options. We will now look at the baseline details. We go to the Baselines menu, then select View Baseline Data. Here we can select any baseline that has been added and then copy it to the clipboard. This table shows any variances from the current plan, so it can be very useful for analysis and reporting. Finally, we will look at the progress versus time report. To get there, we go to the Reports menu and select Progress versus Time. This report is designed for exporting tabular data to Excel to quickly create histograms and S-curves. The right-hand panel allows you to select the data you want to export and also the frequency. Then you can copy the table to the clipboard, paste into Excel and create a chart in just a few clicks. While we are here, I will demonstrate how easy it is to create a chart in Excel using this reporting tool. First, we select the data that we want to export using the filters in the Data Selection section. For this demonstration, I will open the WBS filter dialog and I will press the Show None button. Then select the tunnel drives A to B and B to C by clicking in the Show column against each item. I will then press the OK button to dismiss the dialog. And we make sure the Apply checkbox is ticked. I will skip the data range for now and come back to it in a bit. In the Show section, I want to show the planned tasks and the actuals, so we'll check those boxes. I want to create a histogram and an S-curve, so we'll click on both period and cumulative boxes. The frequency I will make weekly. I will ignore 0 duration tasks, and I'm not showing the trend. Going back to the date range section, I could leave this on auto, but as I am exporting weekly data, I want to start on a Monday. So I will uncheck the auto box and open the earliest date calendar to check the selected date. As it happens, the first task starts on a Monday anyway, so we don't need to change the selected start date. Now we have selected our data and the frequency, we press the Send to Clipboard button. We now open Excel, and I'm using the web version here. Click on the cell you want for the top left of the table and press the paste command. As you can see, the report name is shown, and below that are a list of the filters we used. In this case, we filtered the WBS for drive A to B and drive B to C. Below the filter list are the column headers. Then we have the data. I will select the table including the headers. I will click on Insert and select a graph type. We will use this one with the secondary axis. And we have our chart showing period and cumulative production for both the planned and actuals. Let's now return to TimeChainage and close the report. I'll open the WBS form and export the work breakdown structure. We do this by pressing the Copy Table to Clipboard button on the toolbar. Now we go back to Excel. We'll add a new sheet and press the Paste button. As you see, the full table is here. Note the colours are described by numbers. I will rename the sheet to WBS. Let's return to TimeChainage and open the planned form. If you apply a filter from the toolbar, let's use the WBS filter and select drive A to B. Then when you use the Copy to Clipboard feature, only the filtered tasks will be copied. In this case, the 5 tasks shown. Now that is fine if the data is for export only, say maybe you want to use the data in a report. However, if you intend to make changes to the data and then import it back into TimeChainage, you must not use any filters when exporting. That is because when you paste data into TimeChainage, the new data replaces any existing data. So you will lose all of the filtered out activities. So we will turn the filter off and press the Copy Table to Clipboard button on the toolbar. Going back to Excel, I will add a new sheet and I will call it Planned. I will then paste in the planned activity data. Let's zoom out a little bit just to show all of the columns. Let's return to TimeChainage and open the Actual form. The Actuals form works in exactly the same way as the Planned form, in that there are filters you can apply if you are only exporting the data. You export the data using the Copy button on the toolbar. The Activity Code forms and the WBS code form do not have filters, so the Copy command works just like in the WBS form by exporting the entire table. Again, there is a Copy to Clipboard button in the toolbar. If we go to the baseline details form, We can export the whole table by clicking on the Copy to Clipboard button. You cannot import a baseline, so there is no paste control on this form. Let's look at importing data now. For this, there are 4 rules that you must follow. Let's open the WBS form to discuss the rules. The first rule is that the table of data that you want to import must match the formatting of the TimeChainage table exactly, including the sequence of columns and the data type for each column. The best way to ensure we get the formatting right is to export the table from TimeChainage first to give you the formatting, and it can be an empty table as the column headers are still exported. You don't need to worry about including data in any calculated fields, as TimeChainage will override any data you do include. For this form, the calculated fields are the number of planned and the number of actual activities. The second rule is that the first row of the imported data must have a reference ID of 1, and subsequent rows must be sequential in number, so must go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. as in this table. The third rule is that the data entered must be valid data. So in this form we have a calendar field and a WBS code field. Let's look at the calendar field. The calendar entry is the reference ID of the calendar you want to use. If you have, say, 5 calendars in your project, do not enter a value of 6 or greater, as it would not be a valid value and will cause an error. The final rule is paste only the data. Do not include the column headers. So now we know the rules, let's import some data. We will return to Excel and we'll look at the planned sheet. Importing data into the planned form is as complicated as it gets in TimeChainage, so this will be a good demonstration. Let's add a new activity here in Excel to the end of the table. So we can see what the columns are, we will freeze the headers so they always show. Then we will scroll down to the last row. The reference ID of the new activity must be sequential from the last activity. So we will enter 35. We must enter a WBS value. If we look at the WBS sheet, we can find the value we need. The task will be to install pumps in shaft C. So we will use install pumps as our WBS value, and this has an ID of 12. We go back to the plan sheet and enter 12 in the WBS field. The description will be install pumps in shaft C. If we look at task 3, sync shaft C, we can see the chainage values for the shaft. We will enter 2306 for chainage from and 2326 for chainage to. We enter 0 for production rate and 0 for TRA. And we will enter 10 days for the point duration. The predecessor will be finish shaft C, which is task ID 33. We will give this a relationship of box finish to start, or BS, and add a lag of 5 days. There is no constraint, so we can leave those fields blank. The calendar will be a 5-day calendar. We can look up the ID by going back to TimeChainage and opening the calendars dialog. And we can see the calendar we want has an ID of 2. We go back to Excel and we enter 2 in the calendar field. Most of the remaining fields are calculated, so we can leave them blank. The fields we can still add values to are the activity codes and the 2 user-defined fields at the end. Values in these fields are optional and to prevent this video getting too long, we will leave them blank as well. Now we have added an activity. We select the table, remembering not to include the header row. So starting at cell 3, we select all of the columns and all of the rows including our new task. So remembering our 4 rules that we must follow, the first rule being the formatting must match the TimeChainage table. Well, we copied the table from the planned form, so that matches perfectly. The second rule is sequential numbering starting at 1. All we did was added an activity and we gave it a sequential ID number. The third rule is valid data must be entered. We checked the WBS and calendars for our ID values, so they are fine. The fourth rule is to not include the column headers, and we only copied the data, so that's fine. Now we are happy we have a valid table to import into TimeChainage. We can use the copy command. We now go back to TimeChainage and open the planned form. Then we simply press the Paste Table from Clipboard button in the toolbar. If we scroll down, we should see the new task. And there it is. We still need to schedule the program, so we press the Schedule button. Let's close the form and look at the chart. We can now see the new task of installing pumps. Importing and exporting data in tabular format is very straightforward. It is done from the main data input forms, and in addition, data can be exported from the progress versus time report, and baselines can also be exported. However, you need to be careful when importing data to ensure data integrity. Any invalid data will cause errors in TimeChainage, so make sure you follow the rules I described in this video. Importing schedules from Primavera P6 or Microsoft Project will be covered in separate videos, so look out for those if you are interested. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you found this video helpful. TimeChainage, adding an extra dimension to your schedules.